In the headlines, the CCJ rules that Guyana's Court of Appeal decision and the elections report of the Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield are invalid.
It has been 4 months since the elections were held, and the country has been without a parliament for well over 1 year. No one in Guyana would consider this to be a satisfactory state of affairs.
Leader of the PPP, Barra Jagdo, welcomes the ruling of the CCJ and says he's looking forward to the swearing-in of Irfan Ali as president.
We hope that APNU will not continue with its endeavors to block that.
The foreign powers in Guyana have again warned the government of serious consequences if winner of elections is not declared from the recount. 1 man is dead and another is in a critical condition after a bank's DIH building collapses. And in sport, just 82 minutes of play as Test cricket returns to disappointing start between West Indies and England. With the news, I'm Kurt Campbell. We're glad you could join us. First up, the Caribbean Court of Justice Wednesday afternoon ruled that Guyana's Court of Appeal did not have jurisdiction or the power to interpret Article 1772 of the Constitution, and that the use of the June 22nd ruling by the Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield to come up with a report that shows APNU-AFC winning the elections instead of the PPP was illegal and his report should be discarded. The ruling by the CCJ sets up a showdown at the Guyana Elections Commission GCOM, with Lowenfield, who manages the country's elections, already demonstrating open defiance of the strict orders of retired Judge Claudette Singh, the chair of the commission. President of the CCJ, Justice Adrian Saunders, said it is for GCOM to ensure the CEO submits a report in accordance with its direction of June 16 in order to proceed along the path directed by the laws of Guyana. GCOM has not yet met since Lowenfield presented his report, which discarded over 115,000 votes and handed victory to the coalition APNU-AFC instead of the PPP, as the recount clearly showed.
The concept of, quote, valid votes, unquote, is well known to the legislative framework governing the electoral process. The concept has a particular meaning in that context. The phrase appears several times in the Representation of the People Act, including in Section 96 of that Act. That section, Section 96, calls on the Chief Election Officer to calculate the total number of valid votes of electors which have been cast for each list of candidates. Validity in this context means, and could only mean, those votes that on their face are valid. The determination of such validity is a transparent exercise that weeds out of the process, for example, spoiled or rejected ballots. This is an exercise conducted in the presence of the duly appointed candidates and counting agents of contesting parties. It is after such invalid votes are weeded out that the remaining valid votes count towards the determination of not only the members of the National Assembly, but incidentally as well, the various listed presidential candidates. If the integrity of a ballot or the manner in which a vote was procured is questioned beyond this transparent validation exercise, say because of some fundamental irregularity, such as those alleged by Mr. Harmon, then that would be a matter that must be pursued through Article 163 after the elections have been concluded and the victors declared. At the point in the electoral process where Article 177(2)(b) is reached, there is no further need to reference valid votes because, subject to Article 163, which is triggered by election petition after the election, the relevant validation process has already been completed. By the unnecessary insertion into Article 177(2)(b) of the word valid, the Court of Appeal impliedly invited the CEO to engage unilaterally in a further and unlawful validation exercise that trespassed on the exclusive jurisdiction of the High Court established by Article 163. It was inconsistent with the constitutional framework for the CEO or GCOM to disenfranchise tens of thousands of electors in a seemingly non-transparent and arbitrary manner without the due processes established in Article 163 and the Validation Act. For all these reasons, the court adjudged that the provisions of Article 177.4 were not triggered by Ms. David's application to the Court of Appeal. Since the Court of Appeal had no jurisdiction to hear the application brought by her, the finality clause in Article 177.2b, in 177.4, was inoperable, and under the laws of Guyana, this court had jurisdiction to hear and determine the application by Messrs. Ali and Jagdeo and to set aside the decision of the Court of Appeal. This court was also entitled and required to declare invalid the report issued by the CEO, which was based on the decision of the Court of Appeal. It follows that the appeal of Mrs. Ali and Jagdeo succeeds. The court was addressed with great passion by some counsel appearing before us to make a raft of consequential orders relating to the elections. In this regard, it is important to bear in mind that this case is essentially about jurisdiction, about our jurisdiction, about the jurisdiction of the Court of Appeal, and even implications for the High Court's exclusive jurisdiction under Article 163 and other articles of the Constitution. The court reminded itself that its jurisdiction had been invoked for the sole purpose of determining whether the Court of Appeal lacked jurisdiction to entertain David's application and to make the orders that it made. Once we decided that the Court of Appeal's order was made without jurisdiction and should therefore be set aside, there was nothing left upon which this court would possess jurisdiction to make any further consequential orders. To accept counsel's suggestion and proceed down that path would have been to engage in an exercise not dissimilar from the one embraced by the Court of Appeal majority and which we have issued. It is for GCOM to ensure that the CEO submits a report in accordance with its directive of 16 June in order to proceed along the path directed by the laws of Guyana. As Guyana's final court, the court stated that it could not, however, in all the circumstances, pretend to be oblivious to events that have transpired in that country since December 2018. Indeed, the court had to pronounce on some of those events. It has been 4 months since the elections were held, and the country has been without a parliament for well over 1 year. No one in Guyana would consider this to be a satisfactory state of affairs. We express a fervent hope that there would quickly be a peaceable restoration of normalcy.
We tell you now that PPP's attorney, Anil Nandlal, says the ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice was not surprising. He pointed out that the CCJ has now given all the guidance needed for Guyana Elections Commission to move ahead with the electoral process. Nandlal, who represented General Secretary of the PPP Bar Jagdeo and the presidential candidate Irfan Ali, said the elections officer must now be instructed to present a new report in accordance with the results of the recount for a declaration of the winner, and he must comply.
We knew that we would get that decision of the Court of Appeal set aside, and we also knew that we would get the report of Lowenfield set aside, because Lowenfield helped us in the sense that he, in the letter to the Commission, said that he based his report upon the Court of Appeal decision. So he made it very clear that, you know, his report was contaminated by the decision of the Court of Appeal. So when the Court of Appeal decision was set aside by the CCJ, most naturally, his report had to go. And the CCJ gave all the guidance necessary on the way forward. GCOM or no Guyanese now should be unclear on what the position is. The CCJ said in its ruling very clearly that the position now is that GCOM must restate or reissue its instructions to Lowenfield, instructions that were given on the 16th of June, and direct him now to prepare the report as he's required to do by law based upon the recount numbers. The court made it clear that he nor the commission has any power to invalidate votes, that the votes are presumptively valid and they can only be invalidated by a election petition filed in the High Court by orders of the High Court, that GCOM has no power to interfere with the validity of the ballots, that the system, the electoral system itself, has mechanism in place that weeded out, and that's the word that they use, weeded out invalid ballots on the night of the elections when the ballots were counted at the place of poll. All these things we were saying from the beginning, and we feel very vindicated that democracy has won, justice has triumphed, and Guyana can now go forward in concluding these elections so that we can have the new president sworn in.
Leader of the opposition People's Progressive Party, Jagdeo, in welcoming the ruling, said he now looks forward to an early declaration of the March 2nd, 2020 elections results, which would show that the PPP won those polls. Jagdeo described the ruling as clear, strong and reasoned, but said the PPP will remain vigilant against the contemptuous nature of those who would seek to continue to frustrate the electoral process.
We expect that they will the chair will convene a meeting and move this process speedily to a conclusion, and that it would end up in the declaration of the president. We hope that APNU will not continue with its endeavors to block that, to block the speedy conclusion of the elections process.
The PPP had always maintained that the certified figures from the national recount exercise should be used, but those figures show a victory for the PPP by over 15,000 votes. The chairman, former Judge Claudette Singh, had already instructed Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield to prepare his report based on the recount figures, which he refused to do. Jagdeo said the PPP is cautious that Lowenfield might seek to be contemptuous given the brazen manner in which he has acted before.
So the CEO has clear guidance now. Let us see if he will continue to act unlawfully or in accordance with the guidance of the Caribbean Court of Justice, a superior court. Now, he could be contemptuous, given that some of them have acted in such a brazen manner that he could act in contempt of the court. So a lot depends on the next few days, but what we expect now is that the entire commission and the CEO has had clear guidance from the Caribbean Court of Justice.
Jagdeo now hopes for a speedy conclusion to the more than 4-month-old elections impasse and said at this point there should be no endeavors to block the speedy conclusion of the elections process. Diplomats heading the powerful ABCE countries on Wednesday met with Minister of Foreign Affairs Dr. Karen Cummings, emphasizing that the results of the national recount must be used to declare a winner of the March 2nd elections. Bibi Katoon joins us.
Thank you, Kurt. The meeting was requested by the High Commissioner of Canada to Guyana, Lillian Chatterjee, High Commissioner of the United Kingdom, Greg Quinn, Ambassador of the United States, Sarah Ann Lynch, and Ambassador of the European Union, Fernando Pons Canto. The meeting was held at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, South Road and Shiv Charnapal Drive, Georgetown location. The ministry did not reveal the details of the meeting. In a short statement, it noted that the minister and the foreign representatives met to discuss areas of mutual interest to their respective states. The newsroom understands that the diplomats, in accordance with the previous statements issued, urged the speedy conclusion of the ongoing electoral process. July 8th marked 128 days since the elections were held. The foreign powers also warned that there will be consequences if the results are not declared using the tabulations from the national vote recount. The national vote recount, which concluded in early June, showed the opposition People's Progressive Party winning the elections by 15,416 votes. The British and Canadian High Commissioners and the ambassadors of the European Union and the United States previously issued a statement calling on the Guyana Elections Commission to issue a declaration of the elections based on the results of the recount, as confirmed by CARICOM, to ensure the democratic choice of the people is fulfilled. In that statement on June 24th, they pointed out that it is important that every vote cast by every voter is reflected in the declaration. The Chief Elections Officer, Keith Lowenfield, has submitted a report dumping 115,000 votes and given the incumbent APNU-AFC a victory based on allegations of fraud. However, the ABCE diplomats alluded to the CARICOM report submitted by the three-member scrutineer team. The team said they witnessed nothing which warrants a challenge to the inescapable conclusion that the recount results are acceptable and should constitute the basis of the declaration of the results of the March 2nd general and regional elections. Back to you, Kurt.
Thank you, Bibi. When the newsroom returns, one man is dead and another is in a critical condition after a Banks DIH building collapses and police suspect arson and fire at Study Magistrates Court. We tell you now that an employee of Home Designs Construction is now dead and another is in a critical condition after a building which was being demolished at Banks DIH Ramvelt Industrial Site came crashing down on 5 men sometime after 12 noon Wednesday. Isanella Patwa reports.
This was the scene at Banks DIH Ramvelt Industrial Site after a building collapsed Wednesday just after 12 noon. 5 workers employed by Home Designs Constructions were sitting underneath the building and were trapped under the rubble. Officials of the Georgetown Public Hospital confirmed that one of the employees was killed and another is in a critical condition, while 3 others received minor injuries. The building was in the demolition stage for the past few days. Second in command for operations at the Guyana Fire Service, Clive MacDonald, told the media at the scene that the fire service immediately responded.
We dispatched 2 appliances, one from Central Fire Station, one from West Ramvelt Fire Station, and 2 ambulances at the scene. On arrival at the scene, the crews were informed that 2 persons were trapped under this collapsed shed. Immediately they went into operations and they rescued 2 persons. They were doing a demolition. There was a company hired to do that task.
So the workers entered were Banks DIH workers or?
No, they were workers from the company that was hired to do the job.
Meanwhile, Public Relations Officer at Banks DIH, Troy Peters, told the newsroom that they are working with the authorities to ascertain the cause of the accident. Reporting for the newsroom, I am Isanella Patwa.
Police are investigating an act of arson at the Study Magistrates Court in Region 2 early on Wednesday morning, where a pile of paper and the magistrate's chair was apparently doused with kerosene to ignite the blaze. Ranks of the Guyana Police Force who were in the vicinity of the court formed a bucket brigade to extinguish the fire which started in the upper flat of the building. The incident occurred just before 5 hours. A police corporal who was on duty at the court told investigators that he observed what appeared to be fire and smoke coming from the bottom flat of the building at the area of the stairway. He alerted 2 other ranks and they managed to gain entry through the door on the upper flat of the court and doused the fire. The magistrate's chair was completely destroyed. 4 plastic bottles with suspected kerosene scent emanating from them, along with 2 chisels, were found. The items were lodged at the Study police station. 50-year-old woman of Nern Village, East Berbice Quarantine, appeared virtually at the Georgetown Magistrates Court Wednesday, charged with the offense of child stealing. Patricia Gomes, known as Beverly, was arrested in July 3 by police in Berbice after she was found with a baby girl that was reported missing by her mother in March. She appeared before Magistrate Crystal Lambert and was not required to plead to the indictable charge. She was remanded to prison and slated to reappear in court on July 24th. Gomes had told the police that the baby's mother, who's a Venezuelan national, gave her the baby's birth certificate and other documents as she journeyed from Region 7 to the capital city and visited the Georgetown Public Hospital with the baby. At the Georgetown Hospital, the doctors there treated the toddler and reportedly told Gomes to take her regularly to the clinic for further checkups. Gomes told police that the mother was supposed to collect the baby girl 3 days later, but she never showed up, and so Gomes took her to her village in Nerney. Gomes told the police that she tried calling the mother repeatedly, but her cell phone went to voicemail. A 47-year-old mother of three is seeking assistance from the public to rebuild her home after it was destroyed by high winds on Wednesday morning. The two-bedroom house collapsed at about 5 hours while the family was still in their beds. Bibi Katoon reports.
Ruprani Lachmanarayan, called Sharda, lives at Section B, number 67 Village, East Berbice, Quarantine. At around 5 hours on Wednesday, her two-bedroom wooden house began to shake, and shortly after it collapsed.
I feel the breeze blow, and when I feel my bed on the bed, I'm afraid. Oh God, nothing around. And starting so me hear house fall. Brother, me holla now. My son tell me to move. He get up and go and see everything they grow. Fridge they grow, microwave they grow, TV they grow. And all the things tumble, you can't cook, you can't eat, nothing since morning.
The distraught woman told the newsroom that at the time of the incident, she and her 16-year-old son were lying in bed. The young man is preparing to write the CSEC examination starting on July 17th. The mother of three is pleading with persons to assist her in rebuilding her house.
Praise God, nothing around to me, and it's okay. So it's there to see when I see. And the Sophia vegan mask, but me not talk nothing left on. Sit up there. Oh, make nobody help me. Okay, whatever anybody will help me. Thank God. I would like to assist me with the glass, and thank God to get some little help. And I'm passing on stove, nothing to cook. I'm getting on grocery, nothing. I can't cook since morning, having to cook nothing, having to get food for eat for the morning. And whatsoever anybody wants to help me, I thank God.
Lachmanarayan is a single parent since her husband died some 13 years ago. She is due for a surgery soon for a medical condition. Her medical condition prevents her from working, and she depends solely on public assistance to make ends meet. The woman has another son and a daughter, but they were not at home at the time. Persons desirous of assisting the family can call them on telephone number 602-4571. Bibi Katoon, reporting for the newsroom.